And we're going to go straight from that to the latest business news now on the programme. We're going to start, in fact, with an eagerly awaited decision by the US's central bank. This is to leave interest rates unchanged. And Charles Pellegrin is joining us here on set to tell us more. Charles.
Leaving the rates unchanged was widely expected. And in that regard, the Federal Reserve did not disappoint. But that doesn't mean there won't be more rate hikes in the future. Jerome Powell saying during his press conference that it will be appropriate to raise rates one more time in the 2 remaining meetings this year. The benchmark rate now sits at a range of 5.25 to 5.5%. This is part of the institution's continued battle to bring down inflation to a target 2% level, which it believes ensures price stability and maximum employment. Some have expressed concern the policy could lead to a recession, but those fears can be set aside for now, as the Fed has even raised its growth projections coming up. Jerome Powell emphasized the importance of battling inflation. Take a listen.
My colleagues and I are acutely aware that high inflation imposes significant hardship as it erodes purchasing power, especially for those least able to meet the higher costs of essentials like food, housing, and transportation. We are highly attentive to the risks that high inflation poses to both sides of our mandate, and we are strongly committed to returning inflation to our 2% objective.
Well, let's see how the stock markets are reacting to that latest Fed decision. Now all stocks trading lower in the major European marketplaces at the open this Thursday, as investors are now pricing in the likelihood of one more rate hike before the end of the year. The FTSE in London down 0.5% on us, also ahead of an interest rate decision at the Bank of England later this Thursday. The Paris CAC 40 down over 1%, leading the losses there. We're seeing a similar picture on the major Asian marketplaces this Thursday. The Nikkei closing below 1.22%, and the Hang Seng leading the Hang Seng down just under 1.5%. The Kospi and Seoul leading the losses there, as you can see. Well, a number of external factors could change the Federal Reserve's growth projections for the future. One of them is a potential U.S. government shutdown as a result of a divided Congress. As of right now, money allotted to a vast array of federal programs will expire at midnight on September 30th, the end of the current fiscal year. A bipartisan deal had been struck last summer, but House Republicans on the far right have been demanding deeper cuts in spending. House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy remains confident an agreement will be found before that deadline. And the United Auto Workers and America's big 3 car makers remain far apart in their negotiations, with time running out before the union escalates its strike. Last week, workers walked off the job at 3 plants, one each belonging to Ford, General Motors, and Stellantis, which owns Chrysler. The first ever labor action targeting all 3 producers at once. Those work stoppages set to expand at noon on Friday if no deal is reached, or at least no progress is reached. Brian Quinn has the latest.
People united will never be divided.
The clock is ticking. Members of the United Auto Workers held a practice picket line Wednesday outside Stellantis headquarters. They're getting ready to up the ante, with the union and Big 3 management still far from a deal. In Toledo, Ohio, workers at a Stellantis assembly plant continued their walkout, with the union's noon Friday deadline for escalating the strike rapidly approaching.
And making sure all the wages are fair, cost of living is fair, and the temporary part-time employees are treated at the same level as everybody else.
And then we're also trying to get some of the record profits back in our pockets from the CEOs up top, who are taking it all for themselves.
12,700 UAW workers are currently on strike at just 3 factories, but the union has some 150,000 workers across the Big 3 ready to turn up the pressure. The UAW wants a 40% pay rise, a 32-hour work week, raises tied to inflation, and pension increases. They say years of record profits, a combined $37 billion worth last year, mean the companies can afford to share the wealth. Big 3 executives have called those demands untenable, instead offering roughly 20% raises over 4 years. With targeted walkouts disrupting the supply chain, GM says it's temporarily laying off some 2,000 workers at a Kansas plant until the strike ends. Stellantis laying off 300 people. Union leaders say the layoffs are unnecessary, part of a bid to pressure workers to settle for less.
And one of the mainstays of the Nikkei index in Tokyo could be on its way out. The Toshiba conglomerate, which has been listed since May 1949, could be going private after a consortium led by private equity firm Japan Industrial Partners purchased 78.65% of its shares. A deal could be struck by the end of the year for the company, which is often seen as a Japanese industrial national champion. It was founded in 1875 as a maker of clocks and mechanical dolls, but then became famous worldwide for its home electronics, among many other products and services in the second half of the 20th century. Toshiba, Stuart, went through a number of corporate scandals in recent years, which have really left it on the brink of bankruptcy.
Yeah, big name, though. Thanks very much, Shell. Shell Playground with the business on France 24.